Correct?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it meant teaching in Italian, basically. So there's a metaphor to there, right? Beauty, the beauty of teaching, right? Visual, red kettle coffee. Foreign words, more or less. Don't really know if we're going to even do that. Latin, Greek, Anglo roots. Hey everybody, this is Mario Ranchi, brand strategist and founder of ManuFracture, here today with another episode of Admissions of an Agency. Today, I'm going to recap my naming session with my client, my educational consulting client, and the tutor client that I had. I'm going to show you exactly and recap exactly what happened in the last few months or so, and our strategy sessions and our naming sessions that led to the whole thing, basically. So first things first, naming was incredibly new to me, right? Naming a company is very new to me. I don't really know much about naming, so the first thing I looked up when I went online is about naming structures, how to name things. Are there frameworks to help me with naming a company? And to find those things, and I've got to use them so that I can, use them in my strategy session, and I can use them in a way to get my client a favorable result, a good name, basically. So, first thing I looked up was naming structures, and then I found a naming structure that was really good. It's the naming matrix, and it was from Vital's agency. A really good, nice, naming matrix that really helps you kind of break down the naming process into 3 or 4 parts so that you can actually know how to do that very well. So it was really good that I got that when I did, and I went straight into it. I bought it, and then I went straight into it on the strategy session, on the naming session. So a couple things I learned from naming. Naming is incredibly goddamn hard. I mean, it is. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth, but I think the best thing is to get a flow to keep going with it, right? Just like you do in any strategy session, is to get a flow, keep going with it. Many times, my client would be very quiet, or he just didn't know what he was doing. And he's like, yeah, I'm kind of stuck here, and I would have to I have to unstuck him by providing, and chiming in with my own participation and my own sort of knowledge, and then just writing it down. What's very interesting about this framework is that it kind of, uses two opposites to create a name, basically. So the positive aspect of something, the pain, the solution, and then the pain that you're trying to solve, right? So it's a very interesting format. But we ended up with a name that wasn't exactly within that format, and we ended up with a name called Accelerate Strategy, with the name being Excel, like excel in academics, and accelerate meaning make the process faster. So accelerate academically, basically, is the whole concept of accelerate. And the wordplay helps a little bit, and we named two of them: Accelerate Strategy and Accelerate Learning, basically. And those are the two sort of main entities of Accelerate, the big kind of parent brand, right? So Accelerate Strategies dealing more with school leadership and this type of stuff, and then we have Accelerate Learning, which is more the tutoring and college consulting side, which is something that is kind of been adapting, because since we've done the naming session, a lot of things have come up in the market, and so we've kind of leaned toward to the Accelerate Learning side and kind of put Accelerate Strategy for the side. But when we were doing the naming session, those were the two things that mattered, is kind of how do we separate the two entities in a way that is still consistent and communicates the same thing that we're trying to communicate, which is streamlined strategic education, fast, enjoyable education, basically, and fast learning and enjoyable education. So yeah, that's the meat of it, and basically I'll show you some clips from the strategy session right here, and also I'm going to show you some clips based off of what this framework looks like, basically, so you can kind of get an inside look.
So what do you want to do next?
So are you good with that?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's just fuse these together, basically. Just a quick thing here. I just grabbed this offline real quick. Basically, these are just really, different examples of how names or words can be combined together, basically. So real world is going to be like something like, you know, brew or teach, and your, you know, stuff misspelled, so it's going to be like coffee but with an I. You know, compound, drip, sip, right? Phrases, common ground, blends, swish, full. You know, maybe it's, you know, combined with swish or wonderful, I guess. Made up and abstract. This weird combination makes this weird name, but it's like really poignant and really iconic. So it's like Zoshi or whatever. Transmutations, cup zos. So again, it's like taking the word and misspelling it, but in a different way. Acronym, probably not the best one here, which was what you did before, which was SEA. We just really want something really descriptive. Play on words, deja brew, right? So clever stuff like that. Metaphoric, Hermes coffee. Again, kind of like what you said, Bella Tutors. You know, comes from, like, was it Italian, correct?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it meant teaching in Italian, basically. So there's a metaphor to there, right? Beauty, the beauty of teaching, right? Visual, red kettle coffee. Foreign words, more or less. Don't really know if we're going to even do that. Latin, Greek, Anglo roots. Poetic, honest origin. This or that, so cup and key. So, you know, maybe teach and learn, whatever, right? Just, you know, throwing out examples here. Names and surnames, Taylor Coffee. But, you know, the main things we're going to focus on are not going to be this one or this one. Just really these ones, okay? So let's try combining some of these antonyms and synonyms together to create some words. And I'll just list them down here. All right. So yeah, pick a word, anything that, you know, shouts out to you at first, and then let's combine it.
Optimum.
And let's see what an adjective is. Weak, external, powerless. Let me just look that up. Don't remember if I put a synonym for that. Optimum. Optimal. Let's put optimal. Really? All right. That's weird.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know. It's not supposed to be in the dictionary, apparently, or the. Let's see. Worst. Oh boy. Let's see. Worst. Optimal. Worst. It's literally worst. Alright, let's try out. Okay. Opt to worst. I think the main thing is really just to keep the flow going and just try to keep coming up with stuff over and over again. It's like, you know, in brainstorming things, you don't ever come up with the right answer immediately. So you just got to keep going.
What's the idea behind combining the synonym with the antonym?
Well, it's because, well, I mean, the thing is, that's just one of the ways we can do it. Again, it's some of these other ways that you can do it. It's kind of one of the ways you can do it, right? So it's like, where is it?
Wait, so I understand the idea of the compound, but why a synonym with an antonym?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's just because you can use, the antonym is basically the thing that you're, I guess, against, or, you know, you're working off of, or you're trying to get rid of, basically. So the way we combined is more so kind of like problem solution or solution problem, you know. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But like I said, we can I looked up these ones just in case if this just doesn't work out, correct? So I'm always willing to experiment and adapt to the moment. So opt to worst. Actually, let's do this. I'm gonna bring that in front of us so that we can have a clearer view of what we're looking at. Perfect. Yep. Let's try self-learning, self-leading, leading. You can contribute some names too. Like I'm going off the top of my head.
Sure.
Magno. So this is going to be about naming. So really, with naming, this was an interesting whole thing with Bella Tutor and SEA when that's what they were called before we did the naming. And basically, what I did is used a framework called the naming matrix. And if you can come here, right here, Vitals Agency. So you just type in here Vitals Agency, naming matrix. Should take you here. Oh no, it's 25. Very easy. So yeah, it's very. I thought it was $9.99, but for some reason it's 25. So yeah, so this is pretty good. This is a really good product. It's basically a framework that you can use to solve naming issues and name anything in 30 minutes or less. So I'm going to stop advertising for them now, and I'm just going to show you how this works. So anyway, yeah, so here's the thing. So naming. So the first things are it's about, fusing two words together, basically, is the whole thing, right? Naming fusion. Column questions, center column questions, and then fusion, right? So there's some rules that we use, kind of like in the strategy session. We use rules is, complete sentences, don't discount ideas, etc. And then the name goals, which I put out, this is my addition after doing some research. Persuasive, memorable, distinctive, relevant, emotional, scalable, trademarkable, SEO friendly, I guess. This one less so, but most of these were what we were going for. Scalable, can it be scaled? Can it, evolve with the company? Relevant, is it relevant to the target market? Distinctive, is it distinctive, right? Does it stand out? Memorable, again, I guess memorable and distinctive kind of, but like memorable is about like, does it retain in memory, basically, right? So does the brain remember it when when he's not there, or is it forgettable? Persuasive, does it, lend or say anything that's persuasive about it, right? Does it talk about things or benefits that would possibly persuade someone to look more? So yeah, those are the main things. So wow, so you can see here this is pretty much a mess. I'm gonna try to remove all of this a little bit out of the way so you can kind of see what we've been doing here. So yeah, as you can see, we've done a lot of brainstorming. And the main things we do with the thing is first, there's three columns, right? So what to do, synonyms, and then antonyms, basically. Things that aren't uh, synonyms and antonyms, and then the fusion, basically. So first part is what does it do, right? So what does it do? We just, write incomplete sentences highlighting all the adjectives, right? So I asked my client to just talk about a bunch of stuff. about, what he's talking about, envision the advice, subject matter, tutoring services. So you can see he's just rambling. It's a stream of conscious, which is good. And what we can do is we can pick out the things that are important to us. And I probably should have put that in red. But basically, these are all bolded, and I highlighted the adjectives here that are very important. Self-learners, independent, guidance, minimally, strategic, foundational, capable, maximum, self-sufficient, guidance, right? And then we do the same thing with who's it for, right? So it's kind of like a recap of the target market and what they're doing. And we, again, same thing, highlight the adjectives: self-education, establish, peace of mind, new dawn, dawning, enlightened. As you can see, it's a starting point, right? But you kind of want that to be the starting point, because otherwise what happens is that you get stuck right in the middle of everything, and then you don't do the work. You're not actually doing the work. You're kind of stuck there like, oh, I don't know what to say. Just let the client talk, let them ramble on, and then just from the chaos, create order, right? Highlight the things that you need to do. And the next part is, how does it do it, right? So, again, writing complete sentences, efficient, advanced, Excel. As you can see, there's already some sort of wording that kind of talks about what we came up with. It's starting to kind of form already from these things, right? Why is it needed, etc. And we already talked about that in the other one, in the thing. So basically, there's two things here. You have to find the synonyms and find the antonyms. Synonyms and antonyms are incredibly important here. It's kind of the fusion of these two that create a very powerful wording. Now, the thing with this strategy session, this naming session, didn't go as well as I planned it would, mainly because I was new at this, and we couldn't find something that was, an antonym based, or basically a fusion. So instead, it was a fusion between positives versus negatives. Um, yeah, that was the main difference in this whole thing that I did. Was a fusion of positives, not negatives. So find the antonyms. So we did find the antonyms, and there was tons: unprofitable, slow, sluggish, ruin, moderate, rock bottom, fleeting, temporary, backwards. And all through the while, I was looking up with a thesaurus on me. I had an online thesaurus on me and a dictionary on me to kind of go through as much as I possibly could for all the words. This led to a bit of silence in the strategy sessions, but during the session, but it was good because I was able to kind of span the gamut of all the different wording I could have used. And then synonyms, right? What is similar, right? So what's the solutions, basically? And if we zoom in here, you can see, well, it's actually over here. Let me see. Yeah, it's over here. So, interconnected, freestanding, revolution, traditional, conventional, brick by brick, layered, rigorous, thriving, roaring, etc. So these are, again, positives. And then what we did was with a fusion, right? And we started with a fusion, right? And we tried to do the positive and negative thing, but it didn't work out as much. And so you can see we started to amplify, edu-adapt, pioneer, poly-learning. But you can see we're starting to fuse words. Adapt to obstacles, founded, found decision, inner knowledge, layered learning, strategium, accelerated strategies. You can see it pop up here. And then he also wanted to do Bellissimo strategies, because that was part of his whole brand beforehand, Bella tutoring and whatnot. That was the previous name. So he's kind of stuck. The client was kind of stuck on that, but I was able to kind of put him in a different direction and get him to see it differently. Planning, Obstium, Avant. So you can see some of these are throwaways. Guide dance, right? And you can see I'm also, kind of experimenting with kind of not just the fusion, but how, like using the and instead of just combining the two words together, sharp and swift, elementify, virtuidio, dawn of a new education, right? Some of these are way out there, and some are, pretty substantial, pretty boring. And you kind of want to have a mix between boring and interesting. So you kind of can know, oh, okay, the boring ones are pretty boring, but they got some potential here because they're very practical. And then you have the really exciting ones that are really uh, just exciting, but they're out there and they don't really. And then you kind of want to have that fusion of the two, right? You want to have that boring, but also the practicality. I wouldn't say boring, but practicality and the exciting kind of novel sort of thing that you're looking for in a name. And so accelerate strategies became accelerated strategies and accelerate learning, and then the main companies just accelerate, right? Now, I did find a company that was doing strategic consulting with that name, as not all names are completely original. However, the addition of strategy and learning helps solidify the aspect of, tutoring and consulting and college consulting to the, right? So yeah, that is it for naming. It was one of my first naming sessions. Oh, I forgot to share you this here, but this is basically any other ways of doing words and naming. Apart from the fusion part, right, there's this different types of namings: misspelled, real world, phrases, blends, made up abstract, transmutations, play on words, metaphoric, visual, foreign words, Latin, Greek, Anglo roots, right? So when I couldn't figure out what the fusion, how to do the naming fusion, I had to improvise and I had to be like, okay, well, let's find out what type of how many variations of names are there in, businesses, and how do we put that into this session basically. And that was what we did. So real word is basically just using a real word. Misspelled, I think we used a mix of misspelled, accelerate, um, right? Misspelling accelerate, which is with an A, and then using an E instead with excel. And then we blended it like swishful. It's metaphoric as well because it's like accelerating learning, right? It's showing the actual thing that we do, accelerating strategy, accelerating the basically the benefit that we provide the audience. And so yeah, it was pretty good session, right? And also before we go, naming session, I let the client take some time off to think about it, because if they don't think about it, then they rush to a decision. And so what we do is we're like, okay, do you like this name? We'll talk it over with your friends, and then, if you don't like it, let's consider some other names and whatnot. And surprisingly, everybody agreed with it. Some disagreed with it, but since my client liked it the most, he went forward with it. So yeah, that's naming for you. So I hope you enjoyed that. That was a good, little experiment that I've done with naming. Don't think I'm gonna be doing naming for a while though, because it's definitely hard. But if it ever comes up and I ever need to do it, I'll feel free to do it. But I don't think going in the future, naming is gonna be that much important. It's interesting because I was so excited for naming in the beginning, and now it's kind of like, well, I mean, it was okay, and I really liked it, but it was still pretty, it was still pretty challenging. It kind of wasted a little bit of time where we really need to reach out to the market, and that also is problematic and an issue basically. So trying to up the speed of going to market as much as possible, and naming doesn't really help with that. But anyway, that was it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like this, leave a comment below. And if you want more of this Ambitions of Asia stuff, you can subscribe, you can turn on notifications, you can do all the good YouTube stuff, and I will see you on the next one.